Hello and welcome to Mr.EvilWakes. If you love scary stories to sleep to, you're in the right place. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment where you're watching from in the world. Now, relax, close your eyes, and let the rain carry you into the darkness.
Story 1. I found home videos of my family that shouldn't exist. My brother died when I was 7 years old. He was 13. He drowned in the lake down the street from our house. My parents never touched his room. They tried once but they couldn't do it. Too raw. After that, the door just stayed shut. His room became a kind of museum of him. That was 11 years ago. His room still looks the same. This morning, while I was packing for college, I thought I'd finally go in there. My plan wasn't anything dramatic. I just wanted to grab a few hoodies, maybe a keepsake or two to take with me. Something to hold onto when I got homesick. Full transparency, I've been in his room plenty of times before. I've sat on his bed. I've looked through his shelves. But I've never really gone digging. That felt wrong, and I really had no inclination to. I just missed my brother. That wasn't my intention today either. It wasn't my intention to find a stack of DVDs shoved into the bottom drawer of his dresser. There were 3 of them. Just labeled 1, 2, and 3. The only DVD player in the house is still hooked up to his old TV. Everything else went streaming years ago. For a minute, I told myself not to do it. They weren't mine. They probably didn't matter. I picked up some of the items I had collected, put the DVDs back in his drawer, and returned to my room. Tonight they started calling to me. I know how that sounds. I know you're thinking it was just my curiosity eating at me. But it wasn't like that. It felt physical. A pull in my chest. So I crept back across the hall. Slipped into his room. Locked the door behind me so my parents wouldn't hear, and I put in the first DVD. It was a home video. I didn't even know we had any. I don't remember my parents ever owning a camera. The video starts with static, then clears just enough to show something. The picture is muddy, warped by tracking lines. It could be the living room, but the furniture looks wrong. Everything is too big or too small, shifting every time the frame jitters. Sometimes it almost looks like a bedroom. Sometimes, like a hallway. No faces. No clear shapes. Just flickering shadows that don't match what the voices are saying. Because there are voices. Familiar ones. Laughter, clinking dishes, and my mom calling my brother's name. It sounds like family in the background, just out of sight. I hear my brother's laughter, and the sound swallows me whole. It rings through my head, bouncing off the bones that make up my skull. Then, beneath it is another voice. Low, deliberate, close enough that you couldn't miss it. You haven't noticed yet. Asterisk. Then the video cut off. Just like that. I scrambled to rewind it, not even thinking about the other 2 discs still stacked under the TV. I just wanted to hear him laugh again. That laugh. I tried not to think about the end, though the fear of it was crawling slowly up my spine as I hit play. Because the way it spoke, it sounded like it wasn't part of the recording at all. Like it was speaking to the camera. To me. I pressed play again, this time pausing every few seconds, desperate to make sense of what I was seeing. But nothing held still. Everything on the film looked almost familiar, like a room you swear you've been in but can't place. The walls are a little too narrow, and the colors are washed out enough to make it something you've never seen before. It made me feel like my brain was short-circuiting. Then I froze the frame just before the moment he laughed. And there it was. A caption, faint and yellow, burned into the corner of the screen. July 30th, 2015. 7 months after my brother drowned. My first thought was that it was a glitch. It had to be. The camera must have been off by a year. There's no other explanation. I forced myself to breathe and to shove back the rising panic. Then I pressed play again. His laugh filled the room, and for a second, my fear washed away. It was just him again. He was alive, warm, present. A bittersweet rush of comfort and grief. But then the voice returned. Closer this time, wet against the microphone, broken and cutting in and out like static. You noticed. Asterisk. underscore 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 underscore. I ripped the DVD out of the player and threw it across the room. I don't even know why I did it. Adrenaline, I guess. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't control myself. I'm trying to think of logical explanations. I want to believe there's one. But every reason I come up with feels paper thin. I just bolted back to my room and dove under the covers. Like that would help. I don't want to watch the other videos. I don't. But I can feel them pulling at me, like they're not finished. Like I owe them something. I can't sleep. It's dark. It's late. The rain just started. The bathroom faucet always drips, but tonight it sounds so much louder. You could almost confuse it for footsteps. Story 2. 20 years ago, a child went missing. 2 months ago, I found him. I don't know what I'm doing posting this to a damn internet forum, but I need to get it out somehow. Maybe writing it all down and posting it online will help. I doubt it, but it's worth a shot. Here goes nothing. My name's Daniel Mathis. I used to be a detective, but I retired 2 months back. Well, maybe, retired, isn't the right word. Forced to quit, is more like it. Either way, I'm not on the force anymore. That's enough about me though. If I'm going to tell this story properly, then I need to start at the beginning. The very beginning. It started 20 years ago. A child went missing. A little boy, only 10 years old. His name was Johnny. I'd worked on a few missing person cases before, but this one was different. Johnny was walking back from school with some of his friends. It was getting dark, so he decided to take a shortcut through the woods. His friends were too scared to follow, so Johnny went alone. Needless to say, he never made it home. His parents reported him missing a few hours later. We searched the area for days. We questioned every sex offender in a 15-mile radius. Hell, we combed through every inch of that damn forest, but we never found him. Whoever took Johnny was smart about how they did it. They knew how to cover their tracks. It was almost like the kid vanished into thin air. Flash forward a month to mid-January, and I'm knocking on his parents' front door. It was snowing that day. I remember Paul, the kid's father, answered the door. He looked tired, as if he hadn't slept in weeks. Despite this, he still made an effort to be polite. He gave me a weary smile and shook my hand. "Detective Mathis, come in," he said. "My wife's in the living room." His wife, Erin, was sitting with her back to me, staring at the TV. On the screen was a recording of Johnny, taken a couple months before he disappeared. It was grainy and blurry, the way home videos are. He had bright orange hair, freckles, and green eyes. Just like his mother. In the video, he was dressed in a puffy jacket and playing around in a pile of leaves. It must have been taken in their front yard. "Mommy, mommy, watch this," he yelled, getting a running start before leaping headfirst into the pile of leaves. He burst out a few seconds later, stray foliage clinging to his hair. "Wow, sweetie," Erin's voice said from behind the camera. Johnny flashed a beaming smile, showing off the gap between his front teeth before. Preparing to jump into the leaves once again, I stood in the doorway to the living room, watching the video unfold. Once it reached its end, Erin started it from the beginning. It was only a few seconds long. She gazed into the TV, rubbing her necklace with her thumb, silently whispering along. "Dear," Paul said, shaking her from her trance. "Detective Mathis is here." Erin looked over and paused the video. "Please, take a seat," Paul said, gesturing to a chair. Both he and Erin sat on the couch across from me, his hand holding hers as I started to speak. "Mr. and Mrs. McLean, I'm sorry, but I'm afraid that it is not good news. We have to call off the search for Johnny." Erin broke down immediately, sobbing into her hands. Paul squeezed his eyes shut, trying to stop himself from doing the same. To be honest, I felt like crying as well. I fought to keep it going for as long as I possibly could. But, well, Johnny's been missing for a month now, and we've run out of leads. We're going to keep the case open, but until any new evidence comes to light, well, there's nothing we can do. The living room was filled with the sound of Erin's wails. Paul tried his best to comfort her, but he was barely keeping it together himself. You promised. Erin started to shout. You promised you would bring him home. Mrs. McLean, I am. Why can't you bring him home? She screamed. She rose to her feet and stormed upstairs, leaving Paul and I alone in the living room. I'm sorry. I really am, I muttered, unable to look him in the eye. Paul wiped the tears away from his face before rising to his feet. I think you should leave. I looked up at him, opening my mouth to say something, but no words came out. I simply nodded my head and rose to my feet. Paul was barely fighting back his tears as I left. As soon as I shut the door behind me, I could hear him break down and start to sob. Paul and Erin both died 15 years later. Paul started drinking and never stopped. Erin drove her car off a bridge in the middle of the night and drowned. I don't think they ever forgave me. Not really. To them, I was always the detective that failed to bring their child home. It was the 20th anniversary of the kid's disappearance, December 5th, when I came home to a letter. It had no return address or any distinguishing features. It was just a plain white envelope. There was no way it could have been delivered by a mailman. Someone dropped it off personally. I still have it somewhere, but I don't need to read it again to remember what it said. The words are branded into my brain like a hot iron. I sat at my dining room table, cut the envelope open, and started to read. Dear Detective Mathis, if things were different, I would have written this letter to Johnny's parents. Asterisk. I regret that I never got the opportunity to explain this to them. I know they never would have been able to understand, but I would have liked to explain it regardless. Asterisk. Enough about that, though. With them gone, I have decided that the only one worthy of my confession is you. Asterisk. I watched you search for me, you know. I watched your interviews on the news, I watched as every lead you had went cold. Asterisk. Asterisk. In fact, I've seen you in person. Asterisk. You wouldn't have noticed me. I would have just been another face in the grocery store or on the street. But I noticed you. I always noticed you, Detective Mathis. Asterisk. I am sure you have figured it out by now, but I am the one who took Johnny. I am the one who snatched him away in the woods 20 years ago. Asterisk. I still remember how I lured him into my car. I remember how I knocked him unconscious. I remember how much I was shaking. I want you to know that I never touched him. Not like that, anyway. I want that to be known. Asterisk. Asterisk. On the back of this letter are coordinates. Follow them, and more will be revealed. And if you tell the police about this, you will be throwing away your only chance to do right by Johnny. Asterisk. No more mysteries, no more games. Asterisk. It's time you learn why I did what I did. Asterisk. I sat there reading and rereading that letter for what felt like hours. There were two possibilities. Either the person who took Johnny 20 years ago really had sent me a letter confessing his guilt, or someone was messing with me. And I did not know which was worse. I flipped the letter over and looked at the coordinates, careful not to touch the paper too much. If this really was written by the person who took Johnny, I wanted to preserve the prints. Staring at the coordinates, my first instinct was to call the station, but then another thought came into my mind. I knew that if I showed up with other cops and the guy who took Johnny was there, he'd just get arrested. If I went by myself, I knew I could give him what he really deserved. No witnesses, no one to stop me from putting a bullet in his head. Besides, I could have just said it was self-defense. This man put Johnny's parents through hell. I wasn't about to pass up the opportunity to put him in the ground. I took a picture of the coordinates and plugged them into Google Maps. It was about a 30-minute drive, located deep in woods outside of town. I threw on my coat, grabbed my gun, and raced out to my car. I'm surprised I didn't get pulled over with how fast I was going. As I sped down the interstate, the leather on my steering wheel creaked beneath my grip. My knuckles turned white and I caught myself grinding my teeth together. I thought about what the letter said, how he bragged about seeing me in public. How many times had I walked past this guy? How many times had I passed by someone on the street corner, and that someone was him? I wasn't a cop at this point. I didn't have my badge or my lights on. I was just angry and ready to kill a man. Eventually, I turned onto an old dirt road. I followed the directions until I came upon a trail into the woods. Parking the car, I grabbed the flashlight from my glove box and stepped out. It was twilight, and the forest was quiet, blanketed beneath a thick layer of snow. Not even the birds were making a sound. It was that kind of silence you only find in the dead of winter. As I trudged through the woods, I only became more furious. I imagined what it must have been like when Johnny was brought here. A million questions raced through my mind. Was he unconscious as he was dragged through the snow? Was he even alive? Did he leave a trail of blood, or was he wrapped tightly in a garbage bag? The coordinates took me off the trail and deep into the woods. I didn't even consider if I was going to be able to find my way back. I only had one thing on my mind. Finally, I reached the coordinates. Only to find nothing. It was just a small clearing. Snow-covered ground, bare trees, and the dark sky hanging above. I shined my flashlight around, desperately searching for something, anything. I double-checked my phone to make sure I was at the right spot. I was. Stumbling over to a dead log laying up against a small hill, I sat down. I buried my face in my hands and wiped away a few tears as my breath disappeared into clouds of vapor. The snow came up to my ankles, and the cold seeped through my boots. I slammed my fist down onto the decaying wood. I did it again. Then again. I shot to my feet and spun around, screaming into the empty forest as I furiously stomped down on the log. The dry wood splintered and cracked beneath my boot as I yelled every profanity I could think of. After what must have been my 10th kick, my foot broke through the hollow log and slammed into something behind it. Something metal. I stumbled back, my foot throbbing in pain. Shining my light through the newly formed hole in the log, I saw a rusted metal surface hiding beneath it. I frantically rolled the log aside, the wood breaking apart as I revealed what was underneath. Brushing the snow aside, I realized that what I was staring at was the entrance to a bunker. My breathing was heavy as I tugged on the latch. To my surprise, it was unlocked. The heavy door groaned as I swung it open. I was greeted with stone steps leading down into the dark. Shining my light, I saw just how deep this bunker was. It must have gone down 10 or 15 feet before the steps finally stopped and gave way to an unlit hallway. Drawing my gun, I took a deep breath and started down the steps. Leaving a trail of snow and mud behind me, I reached the bottom of the stairs and shined my light down the hallway. At the end of the hall was a large metal door. My own breath was deafening as I approached. Against the wall, next to the door, was a dial. Holding my flashlight in the crook of my neck, I turned it. I flinched as some sort of intercom screeched on, blaring an old and grainy rendition of When Johnny Comes Marching Home. Asterisk. It began with deafening drums and an ear-piercing whistle before giving way to a cacophony of voices. When Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah! Hurrah! Asterisk. Stuffing my gun into my holster, I clasped my hands over my ears as the sound of an entire choir echoed throughout the bunker. We'll give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah! Hurrah! Asterisk. Pushing the metal door open, I stumbled into the room beyond and frantically looked for the source of the music. The men will cheer, the boys will shout, the ladies, they will all turn out. And we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. Asterisk. At the far end of the room was a computer with multiple monitors, one of which was hooked up to a loudspeaker. And we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching H. I grabbed the wire and ripped it out of the speaker, abruptly stopping the music. With the song no longer playing, I looked around to get a feel for my surroundings. I was in a concrete room with low ceilings and flickering fluorescent lights. It looked like an old hospital ward. The counters were populated by scalpels, operating tools of various sizes, and syringes. In the center of the room was an operating table adorned with leather straps. The whole room smelled like rubbing alcohol. The lights in the ceiling did a poor job at illuminating things, making the whole bunker feel claustrophobic and suffocating. The wall on the left was like something you would see in a mystery film. Hundreds of pieces of paper pinned to a notice board. Some of them had notes furiously scribbled down in handwriting I could barely decipher. Others, however, looked like printed-off images of star systems. A picture of the Milky Way hung next to an old newspaper clipping from 20 years ago that read, "Strange lights spotted in the night sky." The wall opposite of that was, in fact, not a wall, but rather a glass divider, separating this section of the room from whatever was beyond it. Behind the glass was a thick blue mist, so dense that I couldn't even begin to see what was on the other side. "Johnny, are you here?" I shouted, running up to the glass and trying to peer through. Stepping back, I looked around the room in search of something to break the glass. That's when I saw it. On one of the computer screens was a recording titled for Mathis. Approaching the screen, I moved the mouse over it and clicked play. "Hello, Detective Mathis. Asterisk. My grip on my gun tightened when I finally heard his voice. For 20 years I had imagined what this monster sounded like. Finally hearing it felt surreal. The voice was slightly garbled by a modulator, but I could still tell that he was around my age. Mid-60s at most. If you're listening to this, then you read my letter. If you were hoping to arrest me, or maybe even kill me, I am sorry to disappoint you. I have taken exhaustive steps to cover my tracks. Even if you manage to find my identity, I will be long gone by then." Asterisk. I clenched my jaw, imagining how satisfying it would feel to choke him out. "I am sure you have many questions. And I think that this recording will answer most of them. But before I can explain anything, I think it is best to introduce you to someone." Asterisk. With that, the chamber behind the glass divider began to hiss. The fog quickly dissipated, and the room beyond was revealed. I don't think I'll ever be able to forget what I saw when the mist fully cleared. I still see it. Every time I close my eyes. Every time I fall asleep, I see that thing. On the other side of the glass there was I don't even know what to call it. It looked vaguely humanoid, but its limbs were more akin to an arachnid. Countless fingers with numerous joints sprawled forth from its palms like a spider web. Its skin was brown and covered in a thick layer of slime that dripped down onto the floor. Its emaciated torso was hollow, its ribs curling outward to form a central cavity that bellowed slightly as the thing quietly breathed. "Detective Mathis," asterisk said the recording, "meet the basilisk. Whether that is its true name or simply what it has chosen to be called is beyond me." Asterisk. As my eyes traveled over the creature's horribly misshapen and grotesque form, I saw something that made my heart sink into my stomach. Encased within its open rib cage was a body. It was small, frail, and wrapped in a cocoon of sinew. It dripped with the strange fluid, and parts of its discolored skin seemed to be merging with the creature itself. Taking a step towards the glass, I let out a quiet gasp when I saw the strands of orange hair hanging from its scalp. "Johnny," I whispered. To my horror, one of his green eyes fluttered open, his irises bloodshot. He looked at me for a split second before his pupil rolled back into his head and he started to thrash about. He was alive. He was fucking alive. Through the glass, I could hear horrible, excruciating groans. I pray I never have to hear anything like that again. They reverberated off the walls of the bunker, the choked sobs of a child. A child crying not because he is sad or because he needs attention, but because he is in pain. I pressed my hand against the glass and fought back tears as I watched Johnny, the boy I thought had been dead for 20 years, writhe in agony before my eyes. Suddenly, his screams were overpowered by a low groan. A strange clicking noise filled the room as the many elongated fingers of the basilisk began to twitch. After a few seconds, Johnny's muffled screams were silenced. His eye fluttered shut, and he went still. As he stopped moving, so did the basilisk. "Johnny! Johnny!" I screamed, pounding on the glass. Neither he, nor the creature responded. Incredible, isn't it? The recording spoke again. "The basilisk came to me 20 years ago. Its spacecraft descended from the stars before my very eyes." Asterisk. I was barely listening to the recording at this point. My eyes were fixated on Johnny as he lay motionless inside the creature's chest. "Do you want to know the interesting part, Detective Mathis? When it came to me, I was a dying man. Brain cancer. Stage 4. Inoperable." His voice seemed sullen before perking up as he continued. "The basilisk cured me. I should have died years ago, but it halted my tumor in its tracks." Asterisk. I began to look around the room, searching for some way into the chamber, but I found nothing. Johnny was completely sealed off. Can you see it? The fluid that it is secreting. In that fluid lies the cure to cancer. Can you imagine a world where we do not have to fear such a horrid fate? The enzymes in that fluid were the key. I knew that if I could isolate them, learn how to replicate it, I could make cancer a thing of the past. And the basilisk was willing to help me. Asterisk. The voice paused for a second, and I could hear the man let out a sigh. Except, it needed something from me. It wanted a child. Asterisk. I've replayed that part in my head more times than I care to admit. It never fails to make me sick. The basilisk is a creature of the abstract. It feeds off futures that never were. And there is no one who has more potential or imagination for the future as a child. Asterisk. Johnny is alive in there. The basilisk is keeping him alive, keeping his psyche trapped in the body of a child, dreaming of the future he never had. Asterisk. I know your first instinct will probably be to try and pull him out, but that won't save him. The basilisk has been feeding off of Johnny for 20 years, they are merged in body and mind. If you separate them, they both will die. Asterisk. I started to cry. I stumbled back and leaned against the operating table, unable to peel my eyes away from the glass. The voice sighed deeply. I know you think I am a monster, Detective Mathis. But I stand by what I've done. Do you know why? Asterisk. He sounded so arrogant, so damn smug. Because I figured out how to replicate the enzymes. In a few years, I will have a cure to every type of cancer there is. Do you know how many children die of cancer every year? Nearly 100,000. Nearly 2 million children have died in agony since I first took Johnny. Since I gave him to the basilisk. Asterisk. I had to do this. I have a duty to save as many as I can. And the basilisk never would have helped me if I hadn't given it a child. I sacrificed one so I could save millions. Asterisk. No matter how hard I tried, I could not look away from the display on the other side of the glass for more than a few seconds. The otherworldly, incomprehensibly twisted form of the basilisk. Johnny's nearly unrecognizable body, trapped within. If I had gone to the government, the voice began again, they would have locked it away beneath the Pentagon. They would have tortured it, and if they ever realized the good it could do, they would have only given it to the rich. The 1% of the 1%. The corrupt, the greedy, and the perverted. Asterisk. I could hear the anger and bitterness in his voice. I'm going to give this cure to everyone, not just the wealthy. Soon, cancer will be a distant memory. Johnny has made a necessary sacrifice. His suffering has led to an unprecedented leap in medicine. Asterisk. As the recording continued, I approached the glass. Looking at the emaciated husk huddled within the chest cavity. His eye opened again, only for a second. It looked around the room, seeming to follow the web of fingers clinging to the ceiling. In the seconds before he shut his eye again, I could see Johnny's pain. His fear. Now, the recording continued, the way I see it, you have a few options. You could call your precinct, but that would be foolish. If you show them the basilisk, the CIA won't be far behind. If they don't kill you, they will brainwash you into never speaking of this again. They will take both the basilisk and Johnny away for study. He will remain in his living hell, and it will be your fault. Asterisk. I looked down at the gun in my hand, running my thumb over the black metal. Your second option is to kill them, the recording said. Even though I knew they were coming, I felt my heart sink into my stomach as he said those words. I trust you brought your gun. The glass is not bulletproof, and neither is the basilisk. Just a few shots is all it should take. I am no fool. I know that if the basilisk is left unattended, it will eventually leave the bunker and begin searching for other children. Just like any junkie, the high will wear off and it will search for the next one. I could not bring myself to end its life. I worked with it for many years, it is practically my colleague. Asterisk. For the first time since the recording began, I detected a hint of compassion in his voice. So, it is up to you, Detective Mathis. You can put Johnny out of his misery and walk away. You can be satisfied knowing that you ended his suffering the only way you could. Alternatively, you could notify the government. You could risk your own life and doom Johnny to who knows how many more years of agony. You are a pragmatic man, much like myself. I trust you will make the correct decision. Asterisk. And with that, the recording was over. I was left in the bunker with nothing but the hum of fluorescent lights and the horrible abomination on the other side of the glass. Looking up from my gun, I saw Johnny staring at me. Not with one eye, but both. Tears trickled down his cheeks as he gazed at me, his eyes pleading for something. I don't know what was going through his mind. I'm not even sure if he was still capable of thought after 20 years of torment. After a few seconds, the basilisk's fingers twitched again, and Johnny was pulled back into his slumber. I looked down at my gun again. My hand was trembling. A few minutes later, I stepped out of the bunker and into the cold night. The chill nipped at my skin and the barrel of my gun was still smoking. A light snow began to fall as I sat down on the hollow log. I began to sob. I wiped at my eyes, but the tears kept coming. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I cried. As I wept, I felt my gun's weight in my hand, 2 bullets lighter than when I had arrived. Story 3. My family are lying about how my cousin died. Here is how it happened. My sister Allie and I inherited a toy box from our grandmother when she passed away, one of the few things my parents considered worth salvaging from her possessions. The rest of them were sent away to Goodwill or to the junkyard, or were passed around any relatives that cared to claim them. The toy box nobody had wanted, and so it ended up with us. Allie and I hated it on sight and avoided putting anything into it we valued, not least because things seemed to go missing from it on a regular basis. The chest was made of a grimy varnished wood, a grinning bear painted in a 1940s cartoon style on every side. You could tell that it was supposed to be cute, but the artist had done a bad job of it. The bear's eyes oddly humanoid and threatening, its smile full of overlarge teeth with a fat tongue protruding grossly through the middle. How that drawing had ever been deemed appropriate for children I don't know, but then things like that passed in those days. Neither of our parents seemed to see anything wrong with it, anyway. Grandma would have wanted you to have it, Mom said in stern response to our complaints. Don't you think so? Allie and I looked at each other and shrugged. We'd never seen much of our grandmother while she was alive, only during the holidays. Even then she'd mostly sit in an armchair drinking whiskey and getting emotional about her brother, who'd allegedly run away when he was 10 or so and had never come home. We had no idea if Grandma even loved us, let alone if she'd care whether or not we hung onto an old toy box that had surely only ever brought her bad memories. But our mother, Terry, adamant, insisted that we keep it even after Allie admitted that it was giving her nightmares. She wasn't the only one. I took to throwing a blanket over the box at night, convinced that I could see the bear's eyes blinking in the dark, its hairy lips moving around words I could only ever decipher in dreams. The bear trap was mostly empty by that point. We'd gotten into the habit of hiding our favorite toys at the bottom of the wardrobe after noticing the vast majority of the things we stored in the maligned box were lost soon after, or eaten, as we believed. When the time came for Allie to move into her own room, we had a heated argument about which of us had to keep the bear trap. I argued that since I got the old bedroom it was only fair that she took it off my hands, whereas Allie insisted that it may as well stay where it was and that moving it could only be a bad idea. In the end she got her way, triggering a feud between us that went on for a solid month. It only ended with the announcement that our cousin Harry was coming over for Christmas, forcing us to agree to a temporary truce in order to manage the crisis. Harry was just 2 years younger than us, but he still acted like a little kid, clingy and deliberately annoying in whatever way provoked the biggest reaction out of us. Whenever our aunt and uncle stayed over we were expected to keep our cousin occupied, meaning out of the way of the adults, who were not exempt from Harry's reign of terror. We've got to do something about him, said Allie. If he starts repeating everything I say like the last time I'm going to freak out. Like, seriously. I'll go insane. I know, I said somberly. Remember when he broke that chair and Dad went nuts at us like it was our fault? Allie groaned. Yeah, or that time he kept bouncing the tennis ball off of everything. I nodded. He did it all night. I grabbed it and hid it somewhere and he started yelling his ass off. Allie threw herself onto my bed and screamed into the pillow. God, I can't stand him. So what do we do? I asked. If we don't come up with something before he gets here we're screwed. The conversation was taking on the severity of a war room debate. We still have a week before we have to see him, said Allie. That's enough time, right? I don't know, I said. I hope so. By the day Harry arrived my sister and I had come to an agreement to keep him distracted with as many games as we could think of. Being that he had such a short attention span nothing worked until Allie suggested hide and go seek, which brought out a rare competitive focus in him we'd never seen before and knew we likely never would again. Every time Allie or I ended up as it, we'd spend a long time pretending to look for Harry around the house, dragging out the search for as long as we could before finding him and starting another round. We made a huge show of frustration in our losses to keep Harry on the hook, concealing our laughter as he punched the air and whooped before charging off again, determined to beat us some more. It was during our 5th turn of the game that we realized we genuinely could not find him anywhere, having searched every room and every possible hiding spot there was. We'd grown up in that house, knew every part of it as well as we knew each other. We knew, too, that Harry hadn't left the property, both the front and back doors were locked, and there were no footprints to be seen outside in the snow. Panting like runners, Allie and I sat together at the top of the stairs, amazed at having been truly defeated. Then we looked at each other, and a live wire jolt of understanding sparked us both to our feet again. The bear trap, I said. It's the last place he could be. Could he even fit in there? Allie asked, trying to sound doubtful. Harry was slight for his age, and more than a head shorter than I'd been then. With the toy box being the size of a large coffee table, he could have curled up inside pretty comfortably, and could have breathed just fine if he propped the lid open a crack. I wondered with a twisting horror if he'd forgotten to do this and had suffocated to death while we'd been looking for him, but that didn't feel right, somehow. I didn't know how to explain it to Allie, so I kept my mouth shut until we were both in my room, looking at the bear trap as though the animal painted on its many faces would rear up and maul us if we got too close. You'd better open it, I said. Allie shoved her hands in her pockets and shook her head. It's your room, so it's your box. You open it. We were both scared, talking fast, fiddling with our clothes, anything but doing what needed to be done. What if he's dead? I asked, and Allie flicked her eyes to me without moving her head so I saw mostly the whites. Don't, she muttered. Just don't say that, okay? I think even then we understood that neither of us would see Harry alive again, the way the jigsaw puzzles and Lego sets we'd cast to the bottom of the chest had never been recovered. We knew that the box was more than a box, knew that we'd been keeping something dangerous in the house without comprehending what exactly it was. If he is dead, said Allie, what are we going to do? Maybe he won't be, I said. Not everything we've put in there goes away, right? There's still some old junk inside. Allie chewed anxiously at the tail of her braid. Yeah, she said. But most of it goes away. Using the tip of one sneaker, I eased open the lid of the bear trap and kicked it until it fell open against the wall. Apart from a few sad-looking action figures and dusty boxes, there was nothing inside except for 2 dirty footprints where Harry must have been curled up at the bottom. He'd been there, all right, and now he was gone from it in a way that meant the bear trap had swallowed him. Allie turned me another white-eyed, sideways glance. We can't tell anyone about this, she whispered. They'll say we did it to him. In a kind of cold, adult amazement I stared back at her. Allison, I said slowly. You don't get it. Mom and Dad don't see the bear trap like we do. Even if we did tell anybody about it, they'd just think we were lying. They'll never know. We were both right, in our way. When we told our family we'd lost Harry, we were immediately held responsible. Why hadn't we watched him more closely? Hadn't we heard him going outside? Why had we left it so long to tell them he'd gone when some stranger was probably driving away with Harry in the trunk that very moment? The cops asked similar questions when they inevitably came by. Allie and I stuck to the same story, which aside from the one significant omission was the truth. We were both grounded for months, which I grimly tolerated, and Allie took to like a guilty prisoner, having accepted her share of the blame. I resented that Mom had left us with the bear trap, that there was no way to make the adults understand what had really happened that day. It made me bitter and quiet, a teenager before my time. Mostly I was afraid, however. I kept imagining that one day I'd be made to climb into the box, that it would close on me, bite me in half. Whenever I sat up at night, I thought I saw the lid open and shut under the sheet I'd thrown over it, mocking me. I'd projected some kind of evil onto the bear trap for so long that it felt alive to me, in some way, and I hated it so intensely. That my anger was all that held me up against my fear. I never expected to learn what happened to my cousin, supposing he'd simply dropped out of existence like a word scratched off a page. Wherever things went when they were lost under beds or down cracks in the sidewalk was where he was, or so I thought, until, at the end of February, 2 men in suits and overcoats turned up at our front door. What they said to my parents to let them in and talk to them, I'll never know. As far as they're concerned, those men never came by, sticking resolutely to the story they were given to repeat until it became the only truth there was. After they'd spoken to the family, one of the strangers came upstairs to interview Allie and me, one after the other. He talked to me last, knocking on my bedroom door and letting himself in before I even had the chance to answer. "Hi, Reese," he said. "You know why I'm here, don't you?" I did, having gotten the sense of it watching his expensive car pull up in front of the house. "You want to talk about Harry," I said reluctantly. "But I know you're not a cop." They came over already. The man certainly didn't look like a police officer, and I wouldn't have believed him if he'd claimed to be. He could only have been 20 at the most, with a blonde surfer boy haircut and a piercing in his left eyebrow. I noticed that he smelled of mint gum and a popular brand of cologne, obnoxiously strong, and that there was something not right about his eyes. Maybe it's how blue they were, like contacts on a movie set, or how hard he stared when he was talking. If he blinked even once I didn't notice. I tried not to look at him, my eyes on the tips of his black shoes, which were obviously new. "You're right, Reese," the man said. "I'm not a cop. Not exactly. My name is Creed Jansen, and my colleague Milo and I clear up situations like yours. Tie loose ends, things like that. Certain situations require certain people. Does that make sense to you?" "I guess so," I said. "You're government agents or something." Creed grinned. His teeth were very straight, most likely veneers. "Agents," he repeated. "Something like that." Any other kid might have been scared or excited by the admission. As it was, I felt nothing but the brutal stamp of dread. "You found Harry somewhere," I said. "And you know about the bear trap." Creed nodded. "You mean the toy box?" Allison filled us in. There was no disbelief or sense of humoring a child's fantasy in his tone as I'd anticipated. I looked at him directly, then, astonished to realize that he had received the story without any surprise whatsoever. "I should tell you right now that we found your cousin's body," said Creed. "We were tipped off about a cadaver that had been discovered in a forested area just over the Canadian border. He'd been dead when he arrived there, curled up on his side in the snow, and there were no signs of any living person having been in the area to have dumped or posed the body in that position. It was like he dropped out of the sky, only we both know that's not what happened." I glanced into the corner of the room where the bear trap lay under its shroud. "The box," I whispered. "It sent him there." "I'm afraid it did," said Creed. "Wasn't the first time it did something like that, either." His voice was that of a salesman, lively, but professional. "There was another body within a 3-mile radius of your cousin's," he continued. "It had been there, well, a long time. As I understand it, your grandmother had a brother that ran away." Here Creed mimicked air quotes with one hand. "Yeah," I said shakily. "Roger. He was 11, nearly 12, I think. He used to run away a lot, but one time he never came back. Grandma was always talking about it. I remember she got drunk one Thanksgiving and told us she knew that he was dead." I sat down on the edge of my mattress, feeling weightless and vaguely ill. "For whatever reason Roger must have gotten into that box," said Creed, "and when he got out he was somewhere very far away. You see, Roger survived the journey. Shock killed Harry, or some other condition of that kind of travel we don't fully understand. Roger was a little more tough. He tried to get by out there in the forest, lived on what he could. Walked some distance hoping to find his way out, but the cold got to him. Where we found the bodies there were toys everywhere covered in snow, some of them old, some of them new. Guessing they were yours." I said that they were. "Well," said Creed, "that helps us out a lot. That's confirmation both bodies arrived in the area in the same way, which we already knew, but this is what I'm paid to do, Reese. Tie up all those loose ends into a neat little bow." "What is the box?" I asked. "Why do things disappear out of it? Does it do it on purpose?" Creed smiled. "No more than a door opens or a hallway leads somewhere else. You see, the box is just a box, or it was, at one time. That changed. See, from time to time openings appear in space or even objects that are shortcuts to other places. Sometimes they just appear naturally all by themselves. Like wormholes," I said, thinking of the sci-fi shows my dad watched endlessly in the living room on gray afternoons. "You get it," said Creed. "A lot like that. But sometimes these shortcuts aren't all that stable, which makes them dangerous, or people stumble into them without knowing what they are, or where they'll end up, and they're the ones Milo and I have to investigate. That kind don't just appear on their own. There's generally a reason." Creed paused, waiting for me to ask a leading question. When I only looked dully at him he said, "The toy box, or the bear trap, as you guys call it, used to belong to your grandmother and your great-uncle Roger. And, like I said before, when it arrived at the house it really was just a box. But after a while it turned into something else. See, these shortcuts sometimes occur when in the presence of a young person with unused and likely undiscovered psychic abilities. Milo and I looked into your family history. Seems that Roger was having problems fitting in with his peers. Fought a lot with his parents. Felt like they just didn't get him, and he wasn't wrong. There was a reason he wasn't like everybody else, but there was no way for him to understand that or get the help he needed. Taking the chewing gum from his mouth, Creed looked around hopefully for a trash can, resigning himself to putting the wad into a twist of paper in his pocket before unwrapping another. All the ability Roger wasn't using and all that discomfort just built right up, he said. Got stronger and stronger until it started creating a shortcut. Usually they form in places that are already doorways or openings of some sort. A lidded box is as good as any. Roger had no idea what he was making in there, not consciously, anyway. But his subconscious, the part of him that was lonely and angry with everybody. That knew. I looked down at the floorboards, their little lines wiggling in my vision like drunken worms. That's why the box leads to the wilderness, I said. Because Roger wanted to run somewhere far away. Bang on the money, said Creed, extending a hand to ruffle my hair until I cringed away. Poor guy just got unlucky. One day he hid in that box, maybe after some fight with his parents, or playing a game, like Harry, and then he was gone. The shortcut wasn't strong enough for him to get back through, and it stayed just as unstable all these years later. I bet you noticed not everything you put in the box got lost, right? Right, I echoed. The shortcut was weak. Maybe one day it might have broken down and gone away altogether if the bear trap hadn't ended up with you and Allison. I gazed at Creed again, and as his eyes met mine I shuddered, disturbed by the familiarity of the gesture. You knew that there was something off with that box right away, didn't you? Asked Creed gently. And you know other things that maybe don't make sense. Both you and your sister feel that same way. You're twins, aren't you? Yeah, I said. Well, there you go. It's more likely in twins, inheriting abilities like the ones Roger had. And you both got the luck of the draw. As you got older and those powers got a little stronger you stabilized the shortcut. Probably wouldn't have been able to if there weren't two of you. It's been a long time, after all, it should have broken down by now. But two kids with the same psychic focus, the same grievance. Creed trailed off, leaving me horrified by the implication of his words. We didn't want Harry to disappear, I said. Not like that, we didn't mean to kill him. Did you tell him to stay away? Asked Creed innocently. I mean, no, but we didn't know. We didn't know. I swallowed, flushed with panic. We didn't, okay. Of course not, said Creed, patting my shoulder. Milo and me, we know that. We get it. You're kids. Mistakes like this happen all the time. That's why we're here. We're going to take the box with us and put it somewhere out of the way. Milo's downstairs figuring out the legal side of things. We need to agree on a more straightforward version of events. Something the police can sign off on. I watched Creed heft the box under one arm, his slim figure unhindered by its weight. You mean we've got to lie about what happened, I said. More like approach things from a more grounded angle, but sure, let's go with that. You've been doing just fine on that front even before we got here. Yeah, I admitted. But it's wrong to lie. Right. I expected Creed to correct me with a more palatable phrase. Instead he said, it's how we keep stuff like this quiet, Reese, which is how we keep people safe. What if something else happens? I asked. You know. Another accident. Now that you know about your abilities you should be alright. Like being aware of your own strength. So keep aware. Maybe you'll see me again, maybe you won't. Let's hope you won't. Creed readjusted the box in his arms, rolling one shoulder slightly. Well, he said, I'd better get going. There's a lot more work out there needing to be done. Bye, Reese. I opened the bedroom door for him and hung back as he carried the bear trap downstairs and out of the house, the other, dark-haired stranger following close behind. Allie slunk out of her own room to stand beside me at a nearby window as we watched them load the box into the car they'd arrived in. Are you okay? I asked once they were gone. Allie's eyes were red-rimmed, the result of private crying. Not really, she said. Me neither. I sat on the windowsill, surprised that the grief I wanted to feel did not come. All that was over months ago. What did the other guy do? I asked. The one who stayed downstairs with Mom and Dad. He made them sign some stuff, said Allie. I listened. They're not allowed to talk about what happened. They have to tell people some creepy man took Harry away. But there wasn't a man. It was us. Are we bad people now, Reese? Allie looked at me with huge, watery eyes, and I felt sorry for her, as though of the two of us she was the only child in the room. No, Allie, I told her. We're not bad people. But I didn't believe it, said it only to comfort her, or unsuccessfully convince myself that it was so. I couldn't tell my sister how afraid I was of the certain people coming by again, or how I wasn't sure that an awareness of what we were capable of was enough to keep us from doing something wrong again. There were so many nights after that I felt the box feeling of the uncanny and wondered if I was opening other shortcuts somewhere, or building something new and unspeakable that even together my sister and I could not control. I wished we'd never learned what had happened to Harry. That I didn't know what we could do, or what we'd done. Story 4. I'm a real person. I'm a real person. I am literally standing in front of you. I screamed at the woman from the bank. Her face stayed flat. Bored. Please calm down, ma'am, I don't deserve to be spoken to lick. Oh, you don't deserve it. Let me tell you what I've been through. I tried to keep my voice from shaking. First, my debit card stopped working. I thought it was a glitch. Customer service said my account doesn't exist. My life savings, gone. Then the DMV wouldn't renew my license. They said they couldn't find my file. They accused me of forgery. Then the hospital, no record. Not even in billing. And now you're telling me I don't have an account here either. She glanced at her screen and clicked around like she wasn't even trying. Ma'am, she said, cool and scripted, if there's no record, there's no record. Maybe you've made a mistake. A mistake. I'd heard that too many times. From clerks, officials, even friends who acted like they'd never met me. One of them, Rachel, actually called the cops on me when I showed up at her place, asking if she remembered me. They said I was harassing her. I slammed my fists on the counter. Do I look like a mistake to you? She picked up the phone. Security. I left before they could touch me. Outside, everything felt off. Like the colors were just slightly wrong. People passed too quickly. Too quietly. A woman on her phone bumped into me hard. Hey, I barked. She didn't turn. Didn't flinch. I pulled out my phone. Still no service. My contacts list was empty, except for one name I didn't recognize, Alex. I tapped it. The screen blinked. Then a low strange sound buzzed in my ears. A flat voice followed. You are aware now. My skin literally crawled. I looked around. Nothing unusual, except the edges of things seemed unsteady. Like heat rising off asphalt. Who is this? I asked. Silence. Then, this is a necessary correction. The voice didn't sound mechanical. It didn't sound human either. What? I don't understand. The line went dead. A week ago, I found my old birth certificate in a shoebox, except, it had someone else's name on it. Same birthday. Same hospital. Different person. My therapist said I was externalizing unresolved trauma. Said stress can cause memory distortions. But this wasn't memory. This was everything. I backed away, nearly tripping off the curb. The shimmer grew stronger, like the edges of the world were peeling. A child's laughter twisted into a static hiss. The sky pulsed, just once. I'm real, I said aloud. To no one. To myself. I'm real. My reflection in a window, it flickered. Just for a second. Like a broken signal. My skin, my face, it didn't look right. I reached out. My fingers blurred at the edges. No, I whispered. I tried to move. Tried to run. But my legs slowed, like the air was made of mud. My arm dissolved painlessly into drifting fragments. My reflection vanished from the glass. The world around me dimmed, warped, and folded inward. And then, nothing. I don't know how long I was gone. Honestly, it felt like I just blinked, and now I'm back. But I'm in a different city. And there's a different name on my ID. My phone works again though. My accounts are all back. Everything seems normal. But I think it's only a matter of time before it happens again. Am I a real person? Story 5. My town was built around a lake. Nobody will admit the lake exists. Never acknowledge the lake. Never look at it. Never talk about it. Never so much as think about it. None of these rules were ever actually spoken out loud during my childhood that would be acknowledging the lake, after all, but they were as clear as, look both ways before crossing, or, no candy from men with beards and tattoos. The city where I grew up is built along the shoreline of this massive, crystal clear lake, nestled in the mountains. Frankly, it's a great place to grow up. There's nationally renowned elementary schools, drug-free-ish high schools, and nature trails in every direction. The population sits at around 50K, decent sized, which makes it all the more incomprehensible that no one, not even those who just moved here, will admit the lake exists. One of my earliest memories is walking with my mom on one of the trails near our house, one that skirted the lake itself. I had to be young, 3 or 4 at most. I was yanking on her arm in that relentless way little kids do and begging her to let me go swim in the lake. There's nothing there, I remember her telling me over and over. Nothing. At the time I couldn't understand her reaction. My parents never lied to me. That was always their policy. Why wouldn't she look the direction I was pointing? Now though, looking back and filling in the blanks, I remember her jaw clenched tight. A sheen of sweat on her forehead and determined eyes staring resolutely forward, refusing to see the water just along the trail. Terrified. I realize now that's what she looked like. Asterisk. When I was in 2nd grade, I had a best friend. Simon. We would spend each afternoon escaping our daily chores by riding our bikes, playing catch, or other equally irresponsible forms of reckless loitering, to quote my crabby widowed neighbor. There was this one particular hill on Sickle Street we loved to take our bikes down. It really was massive. We had to make sure no adults were watching us when we committed speeding violations down it, or they would flip out and screech at us to wear helmets. Each time we made the daring ride, we would do it just a bit faster than the last. Well, one day we did our fastest yet. We flew down the hill at a speed that would have killed us if we'd fallen, then hopped off our bikes at the bottom. Simon and I collapsed in the grass to cackle at our sheer, stupid audacity. We broke the sound barrier, I said through the laughter. Let's do it again, he said. My wheel almost fell off. We laughed some more, then finally calmed until we were just sitting there, still giddy like we'd accomplished something monumental. It was such a good feeling, of victory and unstoppability. Maybe that was why I said it. Do you think there's any fish in there? Huh? Simon asked. Sickle Street twisted to the right after the hill, but if you kept walking straight you'd hit the lake. That was the view we had as we'd madly flown down the hill, the lake. Surely, Simon had seen it. All these times, he had to have noticed it. The lake. I pointed at it. Do you think there's any fish in it? He stared at me. Any hint of accomplishment was gone from his expression. I'd never brought the lake up with him before. Let's do the hill again, he said. There. Has to be, I continued. It's fresh water. It's huge. I've never seen anybody fishing in it, but I'm going home. There it was, the terror. The same thing I'd seen in everybody else when I dared to bring it up. Just look at it, though. You see it, don't you? I don't see anything, he said. But it's right there. It's. Simon snapped. His face morphed into a mask of hideous anger. He shoved me backwards, and my elbow gashed against my handlebars when I fell. I thought that was it, that he'd released his anger and now we could ride down the hill again, but instead Simon kicked me. He rammed his foot into my side. There's nothing there. He kicked me again, and again, and again. I suspect a rib or two broke. Not sure though. I never told my parents what had happened, and ribs heal on their own. The next day in class, Simon wouldn't respond to me. When I would bike to his house to hang out, he never came to the door. He never attacked me again, but he never looked at me again either. I became like the lake to him. Non-existent. Asterisk. Years passed. I mostly stopped bringing up the lake, but it was always there. Always this dark blue smudge at the bottom of my vision when I looked at the mountains. I never did stop looking at it, but nobody else would. On walks, they would face the other way. They would comment on how pretty the mountains were, but never anything else. In school, when we learned about the water cycle, the class was dead silent with discomfort similar to how it felt on our 4th grade sex ed day. Just talking about water made people think of it. Thinking about it made people tense. Why? I would theorize as I lay in bed at night. Why couldn't it exist? Some people even lived on it. A few of my friends had houses right on the shoreline with the water lapping at their backyards, but when we played, we would never get close. Their parents didn't build fences to block it off. To do so might admit there was something that needed blocking. We simply ignored it. They simply ignored it, I should clarify. For years I wondered if I was crazy. That would make the most sense. Even if I didn't have other hallucinations. Maybe somehow for this one odd thing I unexplainably did. Except how would that explain people's constant nervousness? The catch in their throat when they turned too quickly and forgot to close their eyes. How would hallucinations explain how Simon reacted years ago? Eventually, I stopped thinking about it so much. It wasn't hard. I never stooped to ignoring the lake like everybody else, but it barely affected my life. Our city was a cozy place to grow up. It was easy to forget about this one dark ink blot, no matter how massive it might be. Every once in a while, though, my curiosity would bubble up. Once, as a freshman, a new girl moved into our class halfway through the year. I cornered her after class, before she could make it to the cafeteria. "So have you seen it?" I asked. Hey," she said. "Sorry, seen what?" "The lake." The girl stiffened. Her eyes went wide, and her hands started trembling. "I don't know you," she said, and scurried away. She'd just moved here. How could she already know to pretend it didn't exist? Another time, just after I'd gotten my license, I stopped at a gas station to buy some lottery tickets. I know. You have to be 18 to buy those, yada yada, but I was friends with the cashier and anyways, it's not like I was doing drugs, so let's all move past this, yeah. "Maybe we'll get a winner this time," the cashier, Gerald, said. I'm impulsive, not stupid. Nobody ever wins with these things. Somebody does. I paused. You know, I wish they did tell us who. Other states force the lotto companies to announce it, I've heard. It might make me feel better about wasting my paychecks on these. Gerald shrugged. Some things you never get to know. Some things you have to live your whole life without an answer to. Somebody should put that on a motivational poster. After that, I stopped in the bathroom. When I came out, an unfamiliar woman was talking to Gerald at the counter. "Just passing through," she said. "Never been here before, but the mountains are stunning." I followed her outside. "Hey," I called out. The woman, holding her daughter's small hand, turned to me. "You dropped this." I held out the woman's lost receipt, even though nobody in the history of anywhere has ever cared about a lost receipt. "Thank you," she said anyway. "You're just passing through." "Sorry, I have a tendency to overhear other people's conversations." "No worries. I have a tendency to speak too loudly." "And yes, I am." "Could you do me a favor?" I asked. The woman smiled amicably. "Could you just tell me what that is?" I pointed. Her eyes trailed towards it. "The mountains." "No. Beneath it." Her face snapped back to me. Like Simon's had, it transformed to something twisted and furious, and she clamped her hands over her daughter's eyes. "How dare you!" She marched back to her car. The woman had never been here before. She'd barely even talked to anybody in our city, but she knew. Somehow she knew this grand, terrible secret that I didn't. Another year passed. It was my senior year, and my friends and I went to prom in a group of 8, me with my 6-month girlfriend. At the time, I knew it was ridiculous to think that Sherry, my girlfriend, and I would end up working out. She had college plans. I didn't. Now, though, looking back, I think we might have had a shot. I really do. The night was amazing. We danced until midnight. We snuck shots somebody had smuggled in behind the bleachers. By the time the teacher chaperones were shooing us out, we were giggly, buzzed, and not quite ready for it all to end. You'll be happy to hear, we at least had the good sense not to drive in our current state. We lived close anyways, so the 8 of us walked through the darkened suburb streets. "No," Sherry said when we reached her best friend's house. "Don't go in. Let's do something." "Like what?" We were all silent. None of our parents would be especially thrilled about hosting a group of intoxicated, underage teenagers. The nearest Denny's was miles away, and everywhere else was already closed. "I know what we could do," I said. My words probably slurred. Something dangerous. It seemed to perk everybody up. Dangerous. In high school, that word was equivalent with fun. They followed me without questions down the street and through a grove of trees. We stood on the lake shore. Nobody spoke. Come on, I said. Why shouldn't we? Wordlessly, without deliberating, the 8 of us stripped down to our underwear and waded in. We didn't laugh. Our joking and giggling from before was over. Our senses sharpened, and our brains seemed to clear. Nobody said the word, lake. It was like, even in doing this, we still couldn't bring ourselves to admit it existed. We averted our gazes upwards and thought about other things. We were doing this, but we weren't. The lake existed, but it didn't. A little more. I asked Sherry. We were nearly chest deep. She nodded, and we waded further, past the others, until only our heads were dry. I never thought I'd be doing this. She gripped my hand. Why? You know why. But I don't. Sherry, I don't know. Everybody seems to know what's going on, except me, and I don't know how to ask, or make them tell me. Why? Why can't we talk about? I felt it. Sherry's gasp in front of me told me she did. Too. Indescribable. Out of nowhere. Incorporeal. There was an immediate sense of wrongness. Something had shifted in the universe, but I didn't know what. Only that something had, and that we weren't supposed to be here. We weren't supposed to be doing this. We had to leave now. Now. The others were already rushing back to the shore. Sherry and I followed, half swimming, half running through the dark water. I almost expected something to grab me and drag me under, but nothing did. When we sprinted from the water, we were gasping and shuddering. Half of us were sobbing. We put back on our clothes and walked back to our houses in silence. Nobody would acknowledge what just happened or the presence we'd all felt. We all waved goodbye. In the morning, my friends were gone. I didn't know it until Monday when none of them were at school. Occasionally, my teachers would glance at their empty desks then quickly away, as if they'd slipped up by looking. I tried texting each friend in turn, but each time the only message I received from any of them was, invalid number. This sender does not exist. After school, I rushed to Sherry's house and pounded on the door. Her mother answered. Is Sherry here? Her mother's eyes were vacant and red. I don't know a Sherry. What are you talking about? Your daughter. My girlfriend. Sherry. Her jaw trembled as if she was on the verge of bursting into tears. I don't have a daughter. She shut the door. Asterisk, asterisk. A decade has gone by. I never did end up leaving my hometown. That might sound crazy, but this city really is a good place to grow up. The people are nice. The mountains are beautiful, and the elementary schools are safe. That's all I want for my daughter, her safety. This is the best place to raise her. I just hope she isn't like me, though some part of me already knows she will be. She will question, be curious, want to know why. I'll pretend the lake doesn't exist. I'll look away. Maybe if I ignore it enough she will too, but if she doesn't, I've already resolved what to do. Once, just once, when she's old enough, I'll sit my daughter down. I will point at the lake and say, yes, it exists. No, you're not crazy. And then when she asks, why? I will tell her the horrible truth. That's some things you never get to know.
Thank you for spending your night with me. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and comment where you're listening from. And if you want more rain-soaked nightmares, check out the next video. Sleep tight, if you can.